Hello and welcome to the next video in the Professional Communication series. This one has to deal again with proposals, and I want to talk today about solution statements that persuade. My name is Shoma Jurgensen and I'm the School of Business Chair at Rasmussen College in Brooklyn Park, Maple Grove, Minnesota. The learning objectives for this video are as follows. First, you'll be able to identify the elements in a persuasive solution statement. Second, you'll be able to categorize and describe costs associated with the solution in your proposal. Third, you'll be able to organize benefits based on both formal and core values. And fourth, you'll be able to highlight the way your proposal's benefits exceed costs. If the proposal that you have made does not have benefits exceeding costs, then you might want to go back to the drawing board and make sure you've chosen the right alternative. So what are some of the key elements in a persuasive solution? First, solution statements are well organized visually. So often you'll find very technical information, or when you start to relate the solution to each element of the problem, you'll find that bullet points or numbered lists, if there is some logic to the order in the steps. It's important to do this so that a reader can quickly scan through, find the useful information, and or relate that to someone else who might be helping them make the decision. Third, it's important that the solution be SMART. Now, if you're looking for more information on SMART goals, the same principle applies to solutions, and you'll want to also address objections and transition to your costs and benefits. Now, I want to go back to the SMART piece. A SMART solution is specific, measurable, agreed upon, reachable or realistic, and time-bound. So your solution should have specific suggestions, under S for SMART, be measurable, so you want to avoid words like up, down, increase, decrease, and be as specific as possible. Agreed upon, you want to show some credibility and agreement on this sort of solution or the rationale that led you to this particular solution. Realistic, your solution should be both challenging but doable. And finally, time-bound. You want to give the reader a sense of what timing is most important for your solution to be effective. And it's these things, the specific, measurable, agreed upon, reliable, and time-bound, that also have to do with many objections. And we'll look at a specific example in this presentation as we go through. And of course, it's important not just to present your solution and then jump into costs. A transition, either right after your solution section or right before your cost section, is important as you try to persuade your audience. So let's take a look at an example. And this example, I'm sticking to the solution section here, comes from a text called Successful Writing at Work. I feel like it's a well-organized proposal and therefore solution. However, it doesn't have every element of a persuasive solution. So we'll take a look at that as well. Now this part is very good. First, there's a short paragraph that works like a mini introduction to this section, because often a solution section has and should have quite a few specifics. So in this case, you're explicitly stating the solution and relating it directly to the problem. So in the case of this particular proposal, the author is proposing purchasing and installing a GPS tracking system for each of 22 service vehicles. All right, and then some of the benefits are listed here, and the GPS system in place. This piece leads us into the specifics of the solution. And these specifics are organized visually using bullet points. You'll notice each one is a bullet point but doesn't contain one or two words but a sentence, and that is perfectly acceptable in a proposal. And each solution addresses part of the problem discovered in the problem statement. I've not included that part here, but each one addresses a concern. For example, being able to find the nearest vehicle was a problem, to make sure that they're using the most efficient routes for all their trucks. So both of those are very positive elements of the solution statement. Now here is the example continued, and you'll notice that the bullet points do start to address the solution being smart. The whole smart piece does not have to be included in one sentence, but you should be able to identify each of the points. So first, specific. The solution is very specific. It goes point by point through the rationale and why the solution is the one for this company. It is measurable. So they talk about estimated waiting time and the standards getting down. I believe that they meant hours here and not inches, so that was a typo in the text. But anytime between 9 to 5 hours into just an hour or two, and improving customer satisfaction. So in this case, the solution would benefit from a measurable goal for that increase. Increased number of service calls per day. Again, this solution would benefit from saying that you want to increase the number of service calls per day from 5 to 9. And that would become more measurable. In terms of agreed upon and time-bound and realistic are all encompassed here in this paragraph, as well as some of the other points. But you'll notice a couple of things. First, agreed upon. There is a systems engineer here, and he has already kind of bought into this solution. It is realistic and it is time-bound. As you'll notice, the time is within the next month before our busy summer season, which also shows leadership from the author because they're aware of how the organization does business. So by using a SMART outline for your solution, you're also addressing objections. So here are some things the reader might be thinking. It will take too long. Yet the authors already addressed this. Each unit of our service vehicles, the installation time requires less than 2 hours per vehicle. It's too expensive, and we could save even more time staggering that number. And the author does address costs in the cost section. Our engineers won't do it. Well, they have already the credibility of their systems engineer having bought into and given input on the solution, and will never get it done in time. Well, that's addressed right here. The scheduled for Saturday or other light service period, and then it can be done before the busy period. So ensuring that your solution is smart also allows you to address objections that your reader might have. Now, as you're leading into the costs and benefits section, which is encompassed within your solution, it's important to notice that not all costs are monetary. As you notice, they were looking at things like the timeliness and the ability to avoid interrupting business in this previous example. But often costs revolve around money, time, and people. So let's look at some specifics here. In terms of money, you might look at materials costs or fees. For labor or people costs, how much you might need to hire or move someone from one position to the other or train. Lost income, so if you don't make this change, there are these opportunities, X, Y, and Z, that you're not able to approach. Lost reputation, if you don't fix this, we'll be the only service company that takes 5 to 9 hours to serve a customer when all of our competitors are able to serve them in far shorter amounts of time. Lack of safety. It might cause more accidents for a driver to try and drive from one end of town to the other and do so in a timely manner. And unrealized opportunity. The more that your drivers are driving around inefficiently from place to place, the fewer calls that can be taken and then money made. So this gives an idea of how you might want to categorize and before you itemize your costs. So let's take again a look at an example, because they should add up and include a statement of explanation. So if you're getting your costs from a particular company, make sure you explain why. How you've estimated your cost can be important if it's not directly related. For example, if you're trying to estimate the cost of after-school summer camp programs and you're using the estimated cost of after-school care, you want to make that clear so that there's context for the costs that you've estimated. So in this case, the costs section does include a paragraph about why GPS Locator is the company this author has chosen to go with in terms of estimating cost. Now, in this example, the writer starts with the explanation. You can either put your explanation at the beginning or end of your cost statement. If your audience is particularly skeptical, however, as you might have learned in a previous video about inductive reasoning, setting up the reason why this is the right organization or explaining how you came to your costs would be a more effective organization. So let's look at some of these costs. First, there is a transition sentence. You don't want to just have costs and then list. You want to give the reader an idea or a transition into the state of mind you had when you were estimating costs as well. You'll notice here that the author uses materials costs, the antenna, the transmitter, and cables. They've also then organized all the fees together and given a per vehicle cost. Now, they don't leave it there for the reader to make the connection between one vehicle and 22 vehicles. Instead, they include the total vehicle cost of 22 vehicles at a little over $9,900. Now, what's missing here that was not in the introduction and is not in a statement after this list of costs are things like lost time, lost customers, and the cost of additional labor that would be necessary during busy times. Having this kind of an explanation after your list of costs creates a better transition into your benefits statement, which is what we're going to look at next. So we talked about these costs, money, time, people, and some of the specifics. Now, benefits, you might think, well, it's the flip side, right? If you're wasting money, you're saving money. If you're wasting time, you're saving time. You're increasing productivity, efficiency, safety, or you're making more money than you had before. These kinds of benefits are based on what are called formal values, or the obvious kinds of benefits from the proposal. They are motivating, but not nearly as motivating as those benefits based on core values. Core values will come from benefits like convenience, either for the organization or the customer, increased success, industry leadership, a stronger reputation, which attracts loyal customers, more employee engagement, which can result in better customer service, inspiration, so you might be an inspiration for customers, the industry, for vendors, or increased confidence, either for the organization or for the customer. Now you'll notice these are the types of benefits that the best advertisements on TV start to focus on. They won't just say, no payments until 2013. They want to build on your confidence that your payments, don't worry about them until 2013. You can focus on other things. So this combination of formal and core values is the most persuasive in your benefit statement. And just to summarize, a formal value upon which your benefits or features can be listed are the obvious things. All right, if there's a reduction in the amount of time for a service call, naturally efficiency is increased. All right, they're the specifics of your idea, the flip side of the costs. Core benefits, however, address audience needs. So your reader might be part of a supply management team where they're trying to understand how to build value in the organization through the supply of services to customers. In that case, you're helping that reader be more successful. These are the implied values, the symbolic values. So the most famous example used in marketing is the drill. You're not actually selling a drill. Part of the core value might be you're selling the hole. But and that whole is what the drill delivers for you. Now, some proponents of really connecting to core values will say, well, that's still too obvious. Obviously, you buy a drill to make a hole. The implied or symbolic benefit here might be a home with more pictures. It might be building a playhouse for your children. It might be creating a new room so that your house increases in value. These kinds of symbolic benefits are more motivating and easier for the reader to picture as you present your solution. So let's look at this example now on benefits. So first of all, it's stated that costs will be offset by benefits in this case, in terms of savings. This benefit is a formal value. You save money. So overtime savings, in this case, they have included labor cost savings, even though they did not include that in the cost section. Annual savings, so now they're giving you their unit of measurement here. And this is extremely important. This is where costs and benefits are literally side by side. You will notice that the benefits outweigh the costs. So if it costs $64,800 minus the cost, this is how much your initial cost will actually be. So in this case, the savings are outweighing the costs. Now, they're not taking care of all the costs. Of course, that isn't going to happen on an annual basis, but you'll notice here that they address the 5-year equal and goal. But what they're doing here is they're talking about lots of formal benefits without really addressing the core. Now, their savings aren't going to exceed the cost in the first year. That would be very difficult in this kind of a proposal. But because they didn't address customer satisfaction, they didn't address convenience, they didn't address industry leadership, in this case, we're not weighing those benefits, and they are clearly benefits of the solution, but they're not explicitly stated. So this is one way this proposal can be increased in effectiveness and persuasion by simply thinking through those benefits based on core values. So finally, I just want to review. I know there's a lot of information here, but step by step, you can kind of go through the example and see how you might improve your solution statement in your proposal. First, by explicitly stating the solution. Sometimes we forget to do that as business people and writers because we've been thinking so much about the solution. We forget to make it clear what our details are based upon. Emphasize your relatedness to the problem. Make sure that each element of your SMART solution harkens back to the problem and its symptoms that you identified in the problem statement. Categorize and itemize your costs. Make sure that there is a reason to it, that you think through all the different areas that costs could be incurred. And then reinforce your benefits with both formal and core values. Transitioning to your conclusion is your last step, and that is a separate video. So I thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see your comments. Thank you.